you have all the money that you want to have in order to do all the mission and ministry that you want to offer the world? And if the answer is no, then Generosity Plus would be a really good place to start. It's my joy to be able to talk with clergy and congregations about everything related to money in the life of the church, because we look for ways that you can expand what you already have in place and encourage people to grow in their faithfulness and in their discipleship, because it's all about giving your heart to God.
It's been great to kind of bring the emphasis into the mission of the church, instead of just, well, this is our offering time or something like that. You know, it's become much more richer in our worship service.
Generosity Plus gives a congregation an opportunity to engage all of the resources of the Center for Faith and Giving. There are a number of things that Generosity Plus does, beginning with looking at the church's own vision. We look at ways to communicate that then effectively so that people really can relate to that and respond to that. We can bring a generosity analysis to your congregation that gives you a profile of all of your income streams and a look at your donors, and we can take a look at what that looks like now and what it might look like 5 and 10 years down the road. We meet with leadership and talk about what we've discovered and what the implications of that might mean. With Generosity Plus, you get something that's customized to your context, something that's going to work in your congregation. We see Generosity Plus as an opportunity to walk with a congregation for a full year. We're looking specifically at helping you walk through an annual campaign, how you might build a narrative budget to tell your own extraordinary story of how God is working in your community through the work of faith that you're engaged in.
We've never had a coordinated stewardship campaign. It was a one-person team, and he or she just made up the theme and just had a campaign, and that was it. But all of that material in that Generosity Plus notebook, it all goes together. So the sermons, the scriptures, the bulletin inserts we can use, all the Sunday school lessons, they all go together. And I love it because everyone is buying into it.
We want to think about how are we doing education in a congregation around stewardship and seeing our stewardship as spiritual discipline.
We encourage people to evaluate their lives in ways different than society invites. So it's not about what you have, but about who you are in relation to what God has entrusted to your care.
We've done an entire adult education class on stewardship as a result of the Center for Faith and Giving being with us. So it really has infused our entire life. Christian education, faith formation, the way that the council operates and the stewardship ministry's role, and in terms of it infusing everybody else and getting the whole church involved.
We come in with Generosity Plus, we look at the ways in which you're thanking people for what they're doing, and we suggest ways in which we might be able to make that stronger. It gives us an opportunity to look at best practices so that that environment of trust is implicit and kind of in the DNA of the congregation.
For us, it's helped immensely because our financial secretary has been the one person to collect and count and record money for a long time, and she didn't want it to be that way. But we could never get people to sign up to help out with that. And then we started this program in the spring, and a couple of months ago she had a medical emergency that we found out about on a Saturday. It was life flown to Cleveland Clinic, and we needed to do something on Sunday to change that. And so we put best practice policies in place within a week to be able to have the proper people counting and recording and accounting for all the funds. And without this program, we wouldn't have been ready for that.
One of the things that was most profound was how people began to see numbers as signs and understanding more than just figures on a sheet of paper, but it translated into their faith.
Well, we seek to encourage people to think about stewardship as an important component of discipleship. And so there's spiritual growth, there's scripture that backs up what we're talking about.
Jesus talks about money about 2/3 of the time, specifically in the parables. Spend some time in the Gospel of Luke and you'll notice that this is an important issue for Jesus, and therefore it's an important issue for the church.
Not only did we receive good information, helpful tips, some ideas for some best practices to follow. It was really an enjoyable time, and most importantly, I want to point out that everything that happened that weekend was spiritually based and biblically grounded.
Generosity Plus sort of opens the doors and the windows to the money conversation. What we find is that in places where we've been reticent to talk about money, where we've been hesitant to engage in that conversation, churches aren't achieving the maximum potential they have to resource the mission and ministry God has called them to.
What's been really effective is that stewardship is no longer a bad word, that we understand stewardship more broadly. Our definition of that has expanded, and that infuses all parts of our congregational life.
It has allowed us to take a look at our membership and how we might encourage them to participate in the life of the church in a more holistic fashion.
Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So what we invest in says a whole lot about what we value. So if we value faith, if we value community and church in particular, then this is the program for you.
I felt like the Center for Faith and Giving had a lot of resources and tools to offer us, so that it was no longer just about, gosh, how am I going to pledge for next year's budget, but how are we going to breathe life into the mission of the church by creating a culture of generosity. And that was really my hope and my intention, and I knew that the resources that Center for Faith and Giving would offer would help us reach that goal.